Well, hello and welcome back to Read Becca. We're back again for another weekly chatty catch-up on everything I've read, everything I'm currently reading, and everything I'm looking forward to reading for roughly the present week, as well as some general lifey chit-chat and catch-up on my week. So I'm physically present and awake, but I don't know if I'm mentally present and awake today, so we'll see if this gets scrapped and refilmed. This may or may not make it to you, but this first try seems like it was the time to attempt. So I did read a number of things this week, mostly through audio, and I think I enjoyed all of the audiobooks that I listened to as far as the actual audio narration. But let's dive into quickly what I'm not really going to talk about here, and that is Sunshine by McKinley. This I picked up for my Vampires and Werewolves reading vlog, which I think is going to take me a little longer to edit than I had expected. So probably I was hoping to have it out this week, but I don't think that's gonna happen. It may or may not. So anyway, I liked this very much, and I'm glad I picked it up finally. I've wanted to read this for ages, and I have multiple other McKinley books. It's a very strange, unusual take on vampires in that our main character is a baker. And so there's a lot of this cozy baking element to it that I was not expecting, though it is not like cozy vampires. Definitely. So that one you will see more discussion of in my vlog. The next one, I don't have a physical copy because I only had it on audio, and that was Feral Creatures. This one by Kira Jane Buxton. So this is the second in a zombie apocalypse duology. It's very humorous and very action-packed. And I would say one of the most interesting things to me is that the two books are pretty distinct, even though they're from the same character's perspective. And that character perspective is kind of the selling point of the series, because you are getting a zombie apocalypse from the perspective of a domesticated crow named ST, short for shit turd, which is what his human called him. And that tells you a lot about his human. His human was very into trucks and taught him a love for junk food, specifically Cheetos. So ST is always on the hunt for Cheetos. And he's just a very voicey character, like really distinct, and I love him. So in the first book, obviously ST's owner starts behaving very weird, and it is a zombie apocalypse. So ST's trying to figure out what is going on with the zombie apocalypse and dealing with the immediate fallout of that. A world in immense chaos. And there's a lot of violence, a lot of gruesome and gory stuff in book one. Book two, there's a pretty distinct and significant shift. And I think you could read the two books as standalones on their own. They're pretty self-contained. So book two, it seems years have passed. ST has been traveling. He's decided to go around. He's with a group of owls now and has made his way to Alaska. So from Seattle to Alaska, but he's been all over, it seems. And he has discovered a human who is uninfected. This is a toddler who's somehow survived. And he takes upon himself, because he has such a connection and affinity for humans, mofos, as he calls them, because that's how his previous human knew them, he decides that he's going to be the caretaker for this toddler as she grows up. He wants to bring her back to humanity, more or less, and achieve some sort of normalcy for himself in the role of this domesticated crow life that he thinks he wants to have. And he kind of hopes that maybe she'll make more Cheetos happen, certainly. So what I love about this so much is that it was really, really different from the first book in even just the types of animals that we're interacting with. Because we're with an animal character, the cast is predominantly animals in both books. And we see so many more aquatic animals because there's a significant coastal and sea journey. We see so much more in terms of true threat of wilderness, where the first book, the major threat was the chaos of this zombie outbreak. That's much less a factor here, and it's just the journey through the wilds and trying to keep this child alive while traveling through wilderness from both nature and other animals, the elements, I should say, and other animals. And So all of these factors make it very much a really pacey, action-packed, and yet very, very funny book. And Kyra Jane Buxton is very masterful at writing these really vivid characters who are so lively and very different, and you can completely see the personality of the animal that they are in the writing of them. So I just loved that. I think this second book would be much more palatable if you've been curious about this series, and specifically ST as a character. You can get into this second book, I think, without, like, it's going to spoil some things in the first book, certainly, but it's distanced from a lot of the really graphic, gory stuff, for sure, and you get a lot of the humor. So I enjoyed it so much. I'm really glad to have read this duology, and for a very, very silly book, it just contains so many layers and a lot of great ideas about the identity and the expectations that we place upon other people, and maybe the world as a changing thing, not holding our expectations from the past. Buxton now actually has a, like, it sounds like kind of a cozy Italian book out that's not speculative at all, which seems like a significant departure. So I definitely want to check that one out too. Then, next one I read was a new author for me, Lavender House by Lev A.C. Rosen, the first in a historical mystery series. So I think starting from the title, Lavender House, is a good place to begin, because it's set in 1950s. And during that time, obviously, it was very, very stigmatized to be LGBT or queer in general. And there was the concept of lavender marriages, which were people having a legal hetero-passing marriage so that they could live openly together with other queer partners. And that's sort of what's going on here. There is this mansion house with queer people living in it and living openly with one another, and yet passing outside. But it also has a dual meaning in the actual plant or scent of lavender, because this mansion house is funded by an elderly woman who is a soap purveyor, basically. Massive soap company, but it's kind of artisan, and she really has taken care with it. She personally picks out different scents and lines for this soap. However, she has died. So that's the beginning of the book, and we begin with the series follows Evander Mills, who has just been disgraced from the San Francisco Police Department for being gay, and he was discovered, completely destroyed his career, and kicked out of the police. So the Lavender House folks have found out about that because he was sort of part of the underground community a bit, though distanced. And they know who he is. They know that he would be someone safe to investigate this for them. So he kind of takes on a private detective role here and begins connecting with and becomes part of this small community within the Lavender House himself, connects with all the people there, and begins to realize that immediately that it has to be someone who was connected with the house itself that committed the murder. And so I can't say much more than that, really, because the mystery is very slowly paced. This is not a thriller at all. It's really plotting in a good way, I would say, and character focused, for sure. It's beautifully crafted in looking at these people's lives, in the community that they've built for themselves, both at Lavender House and the different underground bars and spaces they've carved out. So this is extremely steeped in the homophobia of the time as well. I would certainly warn you away, because there are some really hard moments. Even I just read last week, I think, The Woods All Black, which was set in Kentucky, and features strong homophobia in historical Kentucky in a somewhat similar, slightly earlier time period. But almost an exact scenario was described here of someone who was queer and was being very oppressed by their parents in Kentucky, and literally had their windows nailed shut to keep them trapped in their home, to keep them from going anywhere and embarrassing the family, sort of deal. And so you have a lot of really, really hard elements, though they're not graphic, they're not in your face. They're they're sad, they're mournful. And I really love that, the way that it was handled with that care, where it makes you feel empathy rather than horror, I think. And so this was just very, very slow paced and took its time with letting you get to know all of these people and connect with them. But you know, as Evander is investigating, that somebody is going to be a traitor. And how could that be when you're really connecting with all of these people? So I love that. I love getting to know all of the aspects of the soap business, oddly enough. So that was really wonderful, seeing people's specialties as you went along and getting to know all of those elements. So it wasn't what I expected in how just focused on allowing us to take our time meandering through this story. But I really, really enjoyed it, and I absolutely intend to continue on to the next book, for sure. I think there are 2 books out in this series now, and I rather hope it will continue on. It's kind of an odd one because it's published by Tor, who usually publish sci-fi and fantasy. But this is straight up mystery, historical. I don't think there was anything at all speculative to this whatsoever. So I think it was a great choice that they published it. And I have to say, there's a fantastic and very fitting actual blurb on this, which usually I think are terrible, but it's from Walter Mosley. Rosen's smart, bittersweet tale plays with the oldest truth of all, the price we pay for our identity in America. And that is spot on, the perfect sell for this book. If you have any interest after hearing that, you should really pick it up. It's a great mystery, very strong in its sense of identity of the characters and the depiction of the setting and time. Really, really enjoyed it. So then we have a buddy read that I did, The Screaming Staircase. This is the first in the Lockwood & Co. series by Jonathan Stroud, who's probably better known for the Bartimaeus trilogy, which I've read the first book of. And this was so good. This was fantastic. So this is kind of mystery, but paranormal mystery. And it's also in a historical feeling world, but it's not quite. It's not a real history. It's very much a made-up history. It's also a middle grade. So this was really, really good, spooky middle grade, perfect for Halloween time. I'm so happy that I got to this with Tiffany from Towering TBR because we both enjoyed it so much. So anyway, the actual book. So we are in a feeling historical world that seems like it could be the real world, but something happened to where ghosts, visitors, started appearing, and primarily children are sensitive to them and can actually interact with or sense them in some way. So there's all this paranormal stuff going on, but only children really are engaging with them. And as a result, all of these agencies have sprung up with children working for them in order to deal with these ghosts and hauntings. And so that's been going on now for 50 years, according to the book. So that has sort of altered the trajectory of progression in the world. So we are in London, and it feels very Dickensian, based on the child labor aspects, the fact that everything feels kind of dark and damp in London, and just generally, it kind of has that vibe. But also, there are some technologies that are there as well, but not prominent. So we are following, in fact, Lucy, not Lockwood, but she is coming to join the Lockwood Company, a sort of lesser known group that are doing this sort of ghost hunting. And she is joining after just having been slightly disgraced at a previous company, a larger one. Things went wrong. It doesn't seem like it was really her fault. It was probably an adult's fault. But she can't be quite open and honest. And it seems Lockwood maybe is not being open and honest with her either. He's very charismatic though, and certainly the two of them playing off of each other is a great dynamic. There's also a third member of Lockwood & Co., George, and no adults. All 3 of them are children. They're in Lockwood's mansion house that he has managed to acquire from previously his parents, who are not around. They're very conspicuously absent. So Lockwood and Lucy are at a house where there's been a haunting, and they are trying to figure out what's going on there and encounter a very powerful, very angry ghost. And this ghost encounter goes horribly wrong and sets them on a path to kind of trying to solve a cold case, more or less, about this ghost's murder. And so this does feel very, very murder mystery-y. It feels very layered as well, because it doesn't go in a simple straight line at all. It really takes a lot of twists and turns. So this was very full of pace and action that you would kind of expect with a middle grade, but it also had a lot of depth and nuance to it in the storytelling aspects. But on top of it just being very, very layered, it really had so much depth to the characters themselves. Like, I loved getting to know every character in this. They were great characters too. Like, the descriptions of the characters were so perfect and detailed, in often funny ways. The world building, though I can't relay it to you quite right, because it feels like our world, but not quite. It does feel like a whole complete world. You can tell that it's really been thought through. It's also just very, very satisfying as a story and a mystery. So we came to the end and you could see that it had really been thought through. You could see the different pieces that are intended for a larger story arc beyond just this book, and also the mystery within this book being really well encapsulated. And then some open threads that it introduced to help us continue on into the next book. And there just was so much of that, where you could tell this was really masterfully crafted. And for a middle grade to do that at that level, it's just very, very impressive, which I kind of expected from Stroud's previous work. As I said, Bartimaeus is really, really well loved as well. And so I shouldn't be surprised, but I kind of was surprised by the depth and nuance to this book. And it just was a really fun time as well. And appropriate levels of spooky for a middle grade. Like, this was on the higher end of spooky, certainly, but nothing overly graphic or too bad that I couldn't handle it. I'm not kind of a wimp when it comes to gross stuff. But it was very eerie and spooky to be reading, as, you know, I was going through spooky season this past week. Perfect timing, perfect read. This was an absolute hit, and I definitely want to continue on with that one. So those are what I finished. I've had way too much going on reading-wise, so I need to finish Misery within a few hours. I don't think I'm really going to finish it, but I did get a lot more read on it than I actually expected while I was traveling, so that is good. I didn't have the audio for that, or I would have finished it, but I also started and got a significant amount of the way through The Hallowed Hunt. This is the third in Lois McMaster-Bujold's World of Five Gods trilogy, and I did not really make any progress on Your Dear Letter, my Victober selection, Letters of Queen Victoria. And then two, I just started barely. So When the Sleeper Wakes, this was a Victober pick by H.G. Wells, and I started it on audio, and it was just too heavy, too much for where my brain was at. And then Love Medicine, I've also just started as a November buddy read. So all of those are in progress. So that's a lot of books. What else has gone on? I didn't watch a lot this week because I was traveling. And so I did watch one thing, though. Aliens, the second in the Alien franchise. I mentioned last week that I was going to start progressing on that, and I enjoyed it a ton. It was kind of funny, though, because this one, the first Alien, it was very, very underacted. This one was very overacted, especially Bill Paxton. I didn't know Bill Paxton and Paul Reiser were in this movie, but they were both good, though Bill Paxton was ridiculously over the top. I enjoyed all of the aspects that were brought back from the first movie. So the art, the spookiness of the aliens, Ripley, obviously. Jonesy was not a big part, but we have a child. So it's interesting how the sort of Ripley needing to be somewhat a caretaker we had in the first one was the cat, which Ripley's running around trying to wrangle. And in this one, Ripley's constantly running around trying to wrangle this child. And it doesn't really make sense that, you know, as it progresses on, like, increasingly the child is like, "You're my mom," kind of deal. And it's like, not really. You've only known each other for a few hours, probably. It seems like, okay. But I think that works in terms of storytelling and what they wanted to do with the character and how they wanted to execute the threat of the alien. Yeah, so I enjoyed it very much, and I'm curious now that these first two everyone upholds as sort of universally loved, and I could easily find things to pick apart, but I can see why they are. So now I'm wondering, as I continue on past this point, people get a lot more critical. So I don't know what things are going to start falling apart as the series goes on, but I am curious. So I enjoyed it a lot. It was very, very good. And another one that's kind of perfect for spooky times. So onward to my week. I probably don't have a ton to say because I was just traveling. So I had a grand time, kind of not unexpectedly, well, unplanned, very last minute planning, a trip to the Northeast US. So I was all over in the Northeast. I have been to Boston area a lot, and I've been to Salem before, but I hadn't really been around the Northeast very much at all. So I got up there to see some friends, some previous coworkers. That was really, really nice, to just be able to, in somewhat quick succession, see people I haven't seen in a really long time. I made it out to a couple of bookstores, so I will have a haul from that shortly. I did briefly make it to Salem for Halloween stuff, though it is crazy there. I really wanted to get up there for some leaf peeping, so I got really great sights of the leaves as I was driving. It was still leafy most of the way north, the very, very north, like upper Connecticut, northern New York was like the leaves had already dropped, but it also followed me back. So the weather had just sort of changed over to fall about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago here, and that now it is fully followed me back to where we're going to get frost, I think, this next coming week. And the leaves are starting to actually turn somewhat. So it was wild, though, driving the first segment up through Ohio and even 2 parts of Pennsylvania through the Midwest, basically. Huge portions of it were just brown and dead. It was not an enjoyable drive at all through that chunk, which is the longest section, really. So that was weird and sad because I've done that drive a lot. That portion of things I've driven many times and never seen it kind of that ugly, really, other than like in winter when things are all dead. But it's in fall, it's not supposed to be that bad. So that was a little depressing. The other thing that was really depressing, and I've never felt so much like I live in a dystopia as driving at night and seeing the trucks. I hardly even used my brights because there are so many trucks on the road now. And that has ramped up. As I said, the section through the Midwest that I've driven it a lot at all hours of night. But it's been probably maybe 7 years or so since I've done that. And that really has ratcheted up. Both going and coming back. The level of trucks in the truck stops, the rest stops at night is insane. It's unbelievable. They're just piled up all the way through the whole stop, through all of the on and off ramps. It just is dystopian. It feels very, very strange. So yeah, that was really sad to see, to me, really, that has changed so significantly since the last time I was really driving around a lot. But it was alarming, really alarming. Anyway, so on the more positives, I don't want to end on the sad note. On the more positive note, I had a great time. I really got to see people that I wanted to. The weather was beautiful the whole time I was there, so no complaints about that. The sights I got to see were cool, and even just being able to go through an area that I haven't seen very much before was really, really wonderful. Yeah, so I had a great time, and I was so glad that I got the chance to just kind of pick up and go and be free to do that, because that's definitely not something I would have done before. like just picking up with about a week's notice. Like I think I had a week and a half notice to pack up and go on a 15-hour drive to the Northeast and then travel around and see a bunch of people. Yeah, but it was very freeing and very nice. So it also made me realize, because I pretty much just like zipped over to Salem for a few hours. It made me realize like that was the mindset of, oh, hey, it's only 2.5 hours away. So I can run over there and spend a few hours there and get that in for sure. I wouldn't do that around where I am. It's very rare that I would ever think of, oh, hey, I can just run up there for the day. It's only 2 or 3 hours away. I need to get in the mindset of doing that more, because there is a lot that's within 2 to 4 hours of me that I easily could do as a day trip from where I am. And that's something that already was in my mind of wanting to do, but without the mindset of, yeah, it's not really that far. It's not something I need to make a big deal, a whole plan to do. I can just pick up and leave for a day, and that will be fine and not too difficult for me. So anyway, I'm rambling as always. So we will, I think, successfully post this, because this has been a little bit rambly, but not too much. However, I need to look at my recommendations for the week, because it's been a while since I've looked at them. So recommendations this week I have are a video and an article. So the first is a video from Books on My Bookshelf, looking back and kind of doing a deep dive on the Narnia works by C.S. Lewis for 75-year anniversary, and taking us through the C.S. Lewis works. So I very much enjoyed that. And then the other is a article that I ran into on LitHub about the outsized influence of whales, the country, not the animal, the outsized influence of whales on fantasy fiction. And it's something you maybe don't really think about, or I haven't thought about until it's sort of collated together, just how much it has been very, very influential to many significant works. So that was a really fascinating article. So definitely check those out in the description box down below. And I think with that, I will leave you, and I will say, I hope you have a wonderful week in reading and in life, and thank you so very much for watching.